Alright, so we recently had another update from Red Barrels for the Outlast Trials. This saw the commencing of Project Countdown, wherein a reagent has a bomb strapped to their chest in the trials and needs to find time extenders to stop themselves being blown up. All whilst dodging X-Pops and completing the actual trial itself. Stressful stuff, but a lot of fun too. There's also 2 new MK challenges, Poison the Cattle and Empty the Vault, which, with the added jeopardy of the bomb strapped to you, made this that little bit more tense. I've just released a new Let's Play over on the other channel playing these 2 trials with the bomb attached, so you can find the link to that video in the description. And of course with this update, and the reason you are here, is the new documents. These shed some more light on the Avianos Lawler situation, Easterman's further unraveling into what seems to be something out of his control, and also something very interesting regarding another reagent. Please note that there will be spoilers for the Outlast Trials in this video. If you want any videos for the previous updates, then you can find those videos in the Outlast Trials playlist. But let's begin. A new document storyline popped up titled Rumours. The first document in this storyline centers around a reagent we haven't seen before, Reagent 1733. The female reagent was found ritualistically carving and defacing a corpse with a sharpened piece of tin. The words the reagent was carving into the body were everyone, greed, regret, everyone, greed, opportunity, regret, everyone. They were stopped whilst carving out the 8th word. Now, scientists at Signala didn't know why she was doing this, but if you look closely, the first letter from each word spells out the word egregore. Egregore, in its simplest form, is a concept from occultism and mysticism that refers to a thought entity. It is essentially formed by a group of people's shared beliefs, emotions, worship, and intentions. It is believed that when a group of people come together with a shared purpose, they can create a powerful energy field that takes on a life of its own. This sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? This could apply to the X-Pops in the way that they talk about Easterman as if he's some kind of god. Again, I go back to Robert J. Lifton's 8 Methods of Thought Reform, and more specifically the 8th one, Dispensing of Existence. It talks about the in-group and the out-group. Reagent 1733 was likely of the out-group, which is why we see that the reagent was attacked by a bunch of X-Pops. Remember that the X-Pops all seem to share a common thought, that Easterman has in some way saved them. So they're the in-group. It's very possible that the X-Pops saw what the reagent was doing as some sort of affront to Easterman and the therapy, and part of a collective consciousness that showed complete disregard for anyone not in their group. Egregore also gets used to describe a group with a common purpose like that of a family, something that Easterman likes to remind us of, that we are a family.
You can count on me. You're my how high. I'm your daddy. I know I can count on you. We can get through this together. They don't even know what you're capable of.
Another word for egregore is hive mind. Now this is going to be interesting to see how this arc develops now, as we have a little bit more weight behind the collective consciousness angle, but I'm eager to see just how much influence Easterman is having over this collective. During an interview with Reagent 1733, who is heavily injured and dying, the observing scientist is trying to make sense of what the reagent was trying to achieve. Because of their injuries, the reagent isn't making too much sense. The reagent starts to laugh and cry, and then they mention someone, Amelia, and they say that they're sorry. It's not too clear who this Amelia is, but I do have a theory that Amelia may be Doris, the shadowy dame's real name. Maybe. Doris spoke of her having a friend in the trials, Henrietta, but that Henrietta changed at some point. It could be that Reagent 1733 could be Henrietta, but we just don't know yet. One interesting thing that I'll end this chapter with is something in regard to Hitler. In a previous video I mentioned that Hitler was known to be a shy, quiet, withdrawn man, the exact opposite of strong man and staunch ally Benedetto Mussolini, but that when Hitler spoke to the masses, he turned into someone completely different. This group collective was prevalent in that his words would stir up a frenzy in the crowd and they'd turn into a baying mob within minutes. This led some to believe in psychology circles that Adolf Hitler was actually possessed by a god called Wotan, more commonly known as Odin, who according to Norse mythology is the god of violence, war, and destruction. This is something that was also hinted at by Carl Jung in his essay titled Wotan. Now this could lead me down a deep dark rabbit hole that I'm not going to climb into, but there's an old painting called The Wild Chase by Franz von Stuck. It depicts Wotan leading a procession of the dead. It speaks of art anticipating changes in the collective unconscious, and this was painted in 1889. And what else happened in 1889? Hitler was born. Many point out the painting's striking resemblance to one Adolf Hitler. Now we move on to the second set of documents, and this is mainly to do with the whole Lawler Avianos thing, Project Countdown, Noakes' character arc, and Easterman's situation. But we'll focus on Easterman's situation first. On the 27th of March 1960, Easterman is having a meeting with Noakes and Scarfiotti. As said, we'll get onto Noakes shortly, but Easterman talks about his wife Irene, and Scarfiotti mentions that Irene is Easterman's ex-wife. The conversation continues, but Easterman can't shake what Scarfiotti had said to him. He's worried that something has happened to Irene. The following day, Easterman finds out in journals that he divorced Irene more than 6 months ago. He talks of how Moses Scarfiotti laughed in his face about it, and he found a file there with his signature on it, acknowledging the divorce. Except, he doesn't remember this at all. He talks of holes in his memory that he refers to as terrifying gaps, and seeing his foundation having been hollowed out by termites. He found out that Irene divorced him for grotesque negligence. Now, reading his previous journals, we all know how much Easterman loved Irene. He spoke of her regularly in his journals, but it turns out that Easterman apparently hadn't spoken to, seen, or written to Irene in years. That's a lot of memory loss. He talks about losing control, about not having seen the sun in years. His rhetoric turns violent, saying he wants Irene dead. Another chapter in the journey of Easterman's descent into, is it madness or something else entirely? In the previous chapter, we spoke of Hitler potentially having been possessed. Is this what we're seeing with Easterman? That he's being possessed not by Wotan, of course, but by the Skinner Man. I guess time will only tell. Let's go back to the meeting between Easterman, Noakes, and Scarfiotti. Essentially, the bombs that are strapped to the reagents are going off prematurely. Noakes speaks of how he never signed up to kill anybody, saying that the reagents aren't his enemies. We've seen this multiple times, with Noakes protesting what he's being made to do or being threatened by Murkoff's staff, but again, it'll be interesting to see how this develops. Scarfiotti tells Noakes that Project Countdown has already been approved, and there's nothing that he, Noakes, can do to prevent it from happening. Apparently, the fuse box signals are getting crossed, and they convince Noakes by saying that if he helps them sort that issue out, he will end up saving lives. Which of course leads to Easterman mentioning something Irene always said, and then him learning that Irene is now his ex-wife. Anyway, a few days later we get some more information about this project and why it needed to take place. Just under a week later, A. Bradley Avianos, who we now learn is called Alice, and CIA contact Jameson Lawler are having a conversation. For months and months, even years, we've seen a relationship blossoming between these two, and it's finally now been confirmed. Alice tells Jameson about certain bugs, and these bugs are in regard to what we've already learned, is that the crossing of the fuse boxes results in premature detonations, that they blow up before the experiment even gets started. They talk about their nice time and giggle like a couple of lovebirds, but then they mention more precise detonations, that the fuse box will let the reagent buy themselves more time before the bomb goes off, and this will essentially minimize collateral damage. Lawler mentions Saigon. He could be referring to the Saigon ending, in which we saw the reagent driving up to the Hotel Saigon, hosting a peace conference between the US and South Vietnam. The plan was for a false flag attack in order to stoke up tensions between the US and the Allied South, and Ho Chi Minh's communist North. Jameson voices concern that the reagents will be able to extend their time indefinitely. Alice puts Jameson's mind at ease and says that the reagents extending the time until detonation only delays the release, and this provides more suffering, and she mentions that Easterman believes that Murkoff can make the reagents fetishize their own explosive release. To crave it, essentially. I mean, this could be linked to why the reagents' hands were taped to the steering wheel of the car in the Saigon ending. The reagents want that release, and it could be done to make sure they don't change their mind or snap out of the conditioning. Who knows? It's just a theory at this point. But that is essentially it for this update. A bit of a shorter one this time, but still a pretty big lore dump. If you enjoyed this video and this breakdown of the documents and the lore, then please leave a like on the video and leave your comments down below. But for now, take care, and I will see you in the next one.